Good morning, everyone. My name is Marla, and I'm a homeschool educator, a book lady for Usborne Books and More, and also a candidate for the PS School Board at Large. So, I wanted to come live today because this is a question that a lot of people have asked me, and it's quite concerning because I've talked to many Latino parents, and almost all of them agree with what I'm going to say to you about education. Many of them want to blame the parents for bad education. So, education is virtually important to the life of every single child. There is hardly no politician, no teacher, or parent alive today that would disagree with that. But if everyone considers education to be all important, what is education? If you are after a successful education for your children, it would make sense to start with the definition of education. What is education? Education, this is one definition that one person has defined, Kevin Swansea, in his book. He said, I define education in this way. Education is a preparation of a child, intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, for life and eternity. A broad definition of education would be more appropriate. So this is one definition. It is his definition. I agree with it. But a striking element of a definition like this is that it is very broad. It might include a child's training, a discipline, academics, socialization, and every possible experience a child will meet with in his developing years. So a common misconception of education comes when the definition of education narrows to the intellectual. The child is compartmentalized. He is not seen as a whole person, fully integrated with physical, emotional, spiritual, and intellectual capabilities. Thus, if an educational program attempts to address the child's intellect while ignoring the spiritual and emotional development, the approach is, sadly, ignoring the true reality of the child. Likewise, those who separate the spiritual and the emotional part of the child from the intellectual make a big mistake. You cannot delegate only the intellectual training of a child to a professional and retain just the spiritual and emotional development for yourself. Whatever class is taught, the whole child is affected. Physical education, PE, for example, does focus on the physical part of the child, but the emotional and the intellectual side are not affected. In the locker room or out on the field, and anyone who thinks that a student develops only intellectually maturity in algebra class has never taught algebra. So education is I'm going to say a Paideia. I think that's how you say it. A Paideia. I can't pronounce it. And this is another quote from Ephesians 6:4. And fathers, bring your children up in the training and instruction of the Lord. This is the key new Testament passage relating to the raising of children. The key word in the key passage is Paideia. This Greek word used by Paul in the first century epistle was as common then as the word democracy is today. It was a word that carried extensive connotation. Paideia was the entire process whereby the ideal citizen was raised for the ideal state. It involved far more than the stack of books assigned to a child at the beginning of the school year. It included every input and influence that came into the child's life. Paideia is the development of a child from a baby to a man or a woman. Of course, Paul used the word in a different sense than the pagan Greeks at the time. He spoke of raising the child in the Paideia of the Lord. Christians raise their children in the Paideia of Christ. So when a Latino Christian blames a parent, he is blaming the parent in not raising their child in Christ. Another observation. This is a worldview consideration. Okay? By the above definition of education is that our worldview, our fundamental view of reality is going to affect our understanding of education. Education differs according to one's view of such thing as God and eternity. Education will be different if a child is not being prepared for eternity. One who has been prepared with a view to eternity will learn to make decisions in life in light of eternity. For example, he will learn to tell the truth even though it may be disadvantageous in the short run, in the short term. Education is defined as preparation, but preparation for what? There must be some purpose towards which that preparation is directed. Deuteronomy 6:9 says the classic Old Testament encouraging parents to provide an education for their children is Deuteronomy 6:9. Thankfully, this passage is prefaced with the main content of education, the purpose for which that child will live his life. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. Verse 5. Every child will have a unique calling for which he must be prepared. This usually involves work, a future marriage, and future home. Sometimes it includes positions of high responsibility and leadership. In the case of children with special needs, this preparation may call for a great amount of faith and wisdom. Parents must recognize the inherent value of the child in this life, especially in terms of the relationship to be cultivated. But even more important is the fact that our children are being prepared for a calling in eternity. Each child has a specific calling framed by their unique talents and abilities. This we would draw from the principle of individuality. Number 1, Thessalonians 4:11, and 1 Corinthians 12:17-31. Presented in more details in chapter 6. You gotta get the book. It's a really good book. The book is Upgrade 10 Secrets to the Education for Your Child. I really like it, and I might take some of the things and rewrite them into my own book, a manuscript, just to kind of like rewrite it into more simple terms. Presented in more detail in chapter 6, every child is created with unique gifts for a unique calling. It is a common mistake to reduce these callings to intellectual gifts or even to emotional gifts, which happens when you conclude that some children are gifted in math, others are gifted in writing, and others are not gifted in any intellectual pursuit. Everyone is gifted and has a purpose in God's world. Some gifts may lie in the arena of spiritual, emotional, or physical, more than intellectual. So the challenge as a board member, I don't know, it's going to be a challenge because in school, when you put your child in public school or government education, they're not being prepared for eternity. So what are they being prepared for? The whole child must be prepared for his calling. The child is more than a brain, certainly. At 2 years of age, a child is not ready to go to work and establish the household. There is much development that must occur. His intellect, his emotion, soul must be prepared for the challenge that will make up the calling God has placed in his life. So a successful education, if education involves preparation for the future life, it stands to reason that we would want a successful life, and a successful education would seek that end. Interestingly, there is a disconnect today between the modern college, between education, and the business world. Many corporations are forced to provide extensive in-house training to produce effective employees. I will come back for part 2 of preparation and a successful education. Signing off today, and please share this video, like this video, and shop at k4699.myubam.com. Thank you very much. I need to go and wake my son up. We gotta do lessons. Anyways, I just wanted to give you that definition of education and preparation, and let you ponder this book by Kevin Swansea, Upgrade 10 Secrets to the Best Education of a Child. Go get it anywhere you can. Talk to you later.